So, welcome to my session, Automated Salesforce DX. I'm very glad that I got a full room, really. So, it's the last talk. I know it's very hard after a long day. So, the most important thing is that slide, because when you make a photo from that slide, you will find the Bitly link here. And so, this presentation is already publicly shared, and you can grab all the code, everything, what I show there, so you can relax, you can inspire, and you don't have to follow each and every line of code. So this is important because I will show a lot of stuff. And so grab this Bitly link, and then you can go through the presentation afterwards tomorrow when you do your exercises, which we have to do at the end of the session. All right, so please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christian Menzinger. I'm actually working for an ISV partner in Munich in Germany, so I'm building a managed package, a product on the App Exchange. I'm co-leading the Munich developer group in Germany, and I'm also a Salesforce MVP. And so actually that's the company I'm working for, Apero, and you have the company information over there. Okay, forward-looking statement. You have seen this a couple of times. So my forward-looking statement is, please do all copy and paste decisions on knowing that I'm an accidental bash scripter. Okay, so I'm not a hardcore system administrator hacking in a CLI the whole day. So everything I show you is kind of real world approved. It's like kind of in this joke here, I see you did well in school, but what real world skills do you have? Tests. I can take tests. Okay, so everything I show you is really what I faced out the last couple of months when we used Salesforce DX a lot. And I want to give you some inspiration. So it's all about buzzword bingo. Inspiration, do the heavy lifting, blaze a trail, building a bridge. And as I said, here's the Bitly link. Then get inspired and just grab the code snippets afterwards. And that makes it easier and relaxed. And also after a full-blown day, maybe easy to repeat this. Okay, just short, what is Salesforce DX? When you go to the webpage, you will find a lot of different things. Source-driven development, Salesforce CLI, a lot of things are on the web page. So Salesforce DX is actually an umbrella term. It's a marketing term, so it means a lot of different things. Okay, so it's a collection of ideas, paradigms, tools, functionality, best practices, and it can give you just additional ways how you can solve certain problems in the Salesforce ecosystem. And important, Salesforce DX is not for developers only. And Salesforce DX is not an all-or-nothing option. And I will give you a jump start how you can utilize some parts of that Salesforce DX universe right now. So one part we are looking for is the Salesforce command line interface called CLI. So it's important, it's not the Salesforce DX CLI, it's the Salesforce CLI. So a CLI in general is kind of a basic underlying program, and sometimes it's also used as a synonym with Salesforce DX, okay? Some people talking about Salesforce DX meaning the CLI. Sometimes it's a little bit of confusion, but it's the Salesforce command line interface. And the important thing about that is it's just a way how you could interact with Salesforce. Okay, it's not only DX, so it's the Salesforce command line interface. So why is a CLI cool? Actually, commands are faster than clicks. So you just can easily repeat and automate commands, and actually, this is how a CLI is looking. Okay? So you don't have to be frightened, because it's, as I said, I'm not a hardcore programmer, I'm not used to CLIs before, so I just started with easy steps, and I get used to it, and it makes fun, actually, if you just get this burden about just jump into it. And I want to give you a jump start, how you can utilize Salesforce CLI now, or say after the session, because you have the link and you have all the code. So what you can do, what every one of you can do, coder, non-coder, admin, doesn't matter. You can install a CLI, you can open your terminal, it's a Mac terminal or on Windows, the CMD. You can authenticate in Salesforce org, and you can see a list with all authenticated Salesforce orgs. And that gives you the opportunity, whenever you have to log into a Salesforce org, you don't have to go to loginsalesforce.com, put your credentials in. You can use a command for that to log into a pre-authenticated org. I think every one of you has to authenticate to a Salesforce org daily. And so this is maybe a very small improvement, but it gives you a taste what you can really achieve on the very first little step. So there are some Salesforce CLI commands. I put it in the slides. As I said, you have the Bitly link. You can just read the commands afterwards. These are all, of course, documented in the official Salesforce CLI documentation page. So what we are doing is actually we authenticate an org, we see the list with all authenticated orgs, and then we open an org with an alias. So getting started with the Salesforce CLI in 29 seconds. That's the exercise you have to do afterwards, and this is how it works. Download the CLI, as I mentioned. Open your terminal. See if the installation is working. Then authenticate an org. Use an alias for that, Trailhead in my case. Authenticate an org. Okay, you come back. You can use an org list to see all authenticated orgs. Check, check. And then you can open that org with that alias. That's actually the important message. Okay? It's really just 3 commands you have to remember. You can look it up. Even if it is very quick here, just do it at home, and it helps you every day. You can start very, very simple. And then you get a taste about what the CLI can do for you. Okay, so now you just started to use the CLI, and I want that you use the CLI every day. So you may be asking yourself how I can remember all those commands. And the answer is RTFM. What does it stand for? Okay, so you said that my voice is clear on the recording. So here's actually the link if you really want to look it up. But actually now I have some efficiency tips for you. Of course you can go through the manual, and of course you can read it like a roman, like a novel, but actually here's the first efficiency tip. So it should not mean that you should start drinking when you use Salesforce DX, but actually the first efficiency tip is help yourself on how to use the CLI by using the CLI. So actually that's how the cool kids are doing. Okay, so what you can do when you start in your CLI program, you can always use the H parameter and dig into subcommands. So you can really start from a higher level, and then you dig into subcommand, 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 and then you always get a description and see a help article how you can utilize this certain command. So one of the commands we demo here is to get a list of all available DX commands. This would be the same as you would go to the documentation page, so you can help yourself with these commands. SFDX -H, and then you dig into it, then you see there is something like force, and then you see there's something like force doc and force doc command list. You can do it by yourself. This is how it would look like when you type it. You always get a help article. You dig into the next level, you get another help article. You dig into the next level, you get another help article. So you can help yourself by applying the CLI in your daily business. Much to learn you still have. This is just the beginning, which is a quote from Joda. And actually, there are a lot of commands. Okay, now it's fitting better. So there are a lot of commands into the CLI, and I just want to point out some categories which are really, really useful in your daily business. It could be that independently of what your daily business is. So you can use, of course, everything which has to do with orgs, authentication, users. You can do a lot of Apex Lightning stuff. You can even connect to an org and check some limits. For instance, my daily limits on my certain sandbox or whatever. So you have a lot of data management and record behavior and also schema behavior. And I show you some snippets that you can apply afterwards as well. Okay, another efficiency tip when you start working with the CLI, you can use auto-completion and you can use aliases. So the first one is actually a plugin Wade Wagner has on his GitHub repo. So you can just download and install it. And that gives you the behavior that you can use the tab key to auto-complete commands. Okay, so it's less typing. You can use the same behavior as you would like navigate through paths when you use the CLI. Aliases is actually something you can apply for often used commands. So for instance, I open an org every day. I type in SFDX force org open with an alias. I do it every day, and I'm a lazy developer. I'm a developer. So actually, I use an alias for that. And this is actually how you can do. So you can use a bash profile, which is the user configuration file of bash-based command lines. And then you can add aliases for often used commands. Save and reload the file. So these are the commands you see in the demo. And actually, these are just recommended aliases I use in my daily business. For instance, org list. Instead of typing force org list, I have just an abbreviation for that, org list. Or OpenO for open org. So you can name the alias as you like. It's just your configuration file. Okay, here the small live demo. go to the bash profile, paste the aliases. This word is hard for German guys to pronounce. And then you have the behavior, just say open O, and then you can authenticate, open an org. So this is a small adjustment I would recommend that makes it just easier for you and you have less typing when you use it on a daily basis as agreed before, right? Okay, so a scenario which you're facing out when you start or when you do trailheads, when you want to try something out is actually you need a playground for try something out in Salesforce, okay? So now you have the behavior creating scratch orgs, which is actually cool that I can have a temporary environment to just try something out in the Salesforce universe. So you would say, okay, give me a playground to fiddle around. So what I'm doing, the typical DX flow is create a scratch org, but that requires a scratch org definition file. Then you would say, okay, when I fiddle around and I want to get back some data or some metadata I changed, I want to pull my changes, how can I do this? So that actually requires an SFDX project. So this is all when you do trailheads, you will phase out all these things when you're not in that level, but it's just an involvement. Then it's always good to have version control. Even if you do a local project, it's always useful. You don't have to push it somewhere in the cloud to GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever. It's also useful to have it just locally. It helps you. So VCS is always a good idea. So probably I use Git. I create a Git. I have to create a Git repository. And also when you use with Git, there are always some files you don't want to commit to your repository. So you need a git ignore file. So that means if you really want to set up a proper playground as a developer, you have to do all these steps, which is actually, in translation to the CLI, create a new SFDX project, create a new scratch org, set the default username, create a git ignore file, initialize local git repository, initial commit, start working on the new org. So these are all steps you would do every time when you spin up a new playground to try something out. And you have to type all these stuff when you do it manually. Okay, so this is, as I said, pretty straightforward if you do trailheads. There are all these steps in one or the other trailhead mentioned, actually. So one thing I want to figure out is that here, I can create a file in a command line by just say echo, and then I have a string, and then pipe it to another output, which is this bracket here, and I would create that file. So I really create a file, git ignore, with that content in the echo strings. Okay, so this is just something convenient. But if you do this all after each other, then actually you have a proper playground. If you would push your source to GitHub, there are some 2 more commands you could probably use. Okay, so this is actually the demo. As I said, create a new project. I name it Hello World. I create a new scratch org. I create a new project and a new scratch org. Then I create that git ignore file. Then I do all the git stuff. So I make a git init, I make a git add, I make a git commit, and I want to open the org. I know it's fast, but as I said, these are just the steps we had before. And the point is actually, whenever you're facing out that you're doing stuff like this every time, step by step, you can just make your life easy by using just a small bash script. And the only thing what you do is all the commands from the previous step, just copy it to a file, name it like createplayground.sh, and there are some just minimum modifications. The only thing I modify here is actually this first line, which tells the CLI, okay, I'm a bash script, and I'm using this $1 string here, which means the first argument, when you call that script, the first argument you can process, like a variable, okay? And if you put just the commands from the previous step, because you do trailhead, just put it into a bash script. The cool thing is actually, you only have to remember one command to spin up a whole playground, which is bash, create playground, and then pass a parameter. That's the only thing you do. Create bash, create playground, hello world, and the rest is kind of automated. And there are some things we use in our daily development stuff, and I want to give you some snippets, but also some considerations when you use this. It works on my machine. This is a typical developer sentence, right? So why? Because the script could fail. Why? For instance, you don't have a Salesforce CLI installation, or you don't have the Dev Hub authentication. You need to spin up a scratch org. You maybe don't have Git installed, and it's also all the snippets only work for bash-based command lines. So there are also other syntax for other flavors for other command line interfaces. So these snippets are for bash-based command lines only. But nevertheless, I give you some snippets to get about this burden when you start with automation, actually. So, for instance, checking which, if is the Salesforce CLI really installed, you can use this snippet from Peter Chittum. He's sitting in the back right, so thank you, Peter, for this small snippet here. And so you can put this into your script to make sure that if someone else from your team is using the same script, that he get a proper error message whenever a script fails, for instance. And of course, the same can be done to check if Git is installed. Okay, so as I said, I'm passing a parameter to that script to use as the project name and to use as the alias for my scratch org. Maybe I want to check if I really had to, if someone really passed an argument, or I can use a default parameter. So this is the snippet for it. I'm just checking if $1 is set. If not, I'm using a hard-coded string dev playground. Otherwise, I use exactly what the user actually passed into that script. Okay, so this is just one demo flow, but also something I think everyone who wants to play around with Salesforce is a useful one. Another one is testing. So I'm working for an ISV, so we're building a product, and we, of course, heavily rely on testing, automated testing, but also, of course, process testing, that really a human guy wants to use the software and see what the outcome is. So whenever you start testing, I have to do certain steps. I spin up a scratch org for the test, a test environment actually, for the guy who really wants to click around and test the software. I have to push my current source, so the current master actually, check if something, just the latest version of my source, that's all. And I have to do some configuration on my org, for instance. I have to assign a profile, I have to assign perm sets, whatever configuration you have to do to make your software properly working, install a managed package, all that stuff, when you really set up that whole test scenario. And we are also executing some development-only stuff. So facing that example that we creating a new feature, which is not yet in the master, because otherwise it would be kind of in the product. So we are in the phase before. I want to test if my feature really is approved so that my project owner really can test it. So I'm overriding a certain class that this feature now pops up, like a feature parameter, which I hard code, but I do not hard code it in the code, because whenever you hard code in the code, what happens? You check it into Git and you check it into your master if you don't have code reviews. Never a good idea. So we just have a small snippet which overrides a certain setting on the org that this feature is enabled only in this environment, only for that certain use case. And of course, if you test a flow, if you test a process or a processional software, you need test data. This is the most important thing, and also whenever you hear some things about Salesforce DX, what is, in my opinion, always has to be mentioned more is metadata. That's the one part. Building your data, your test data, is the other one, because when you have a scratch org, it's empty. Yeah? You have your metadata, but you have to test your metadata with real data, with records. Okay, so these are actually all things we have to do whenever we test the software with a real tester. And of course, because maybe my project owner or even we have a student doing this, he's maybe not the DX guy and he's not fiddling around in the CLI, so he just wants to have some credentials for that org that he can authenticate the way he used to using login.salesforce.com. So those are all steps I do. So this is actually the script which I automated. I spin up a new scratch org. I'm checking if the scratch org is existing. I push the source. You see here I do some metadata deployment. Then I'm executing some Apex to override the configuration for the deployment only. I deploy and profile update, metadata deployment. I create new credentials. And here I start the demo data push. In this case, we're using Talent. And Talent actually is using the SOAP API. And at the end, I output the new credentials. As I said, I know it's fast, but the important thing is actually that there are so many manual steps. If I would this all by myself, it just takes me time. And if you do a proper automation, if you think about how you could utilize the CLI and bash scripts for that, it's really, really cool, because whenever someone wants to test, I push the button, 5 minutes later, I pass the credentials from the CLI here and directly say, okay, here we go. Okay? And I have some snippets from that whole scenario for you, which you can apply also for your daily business. First of all, when you create a new Scratch org, you want to check if that Scratch org, if that alias maybe is already registered. You can do it with that snippet. So, as I said, it's a lot of kind of weird characters here. But the important message is, when you're in the CLI, you can also utilize other programs from the CLI. You don't have to only use Salesforce CLI commands. You can use other commands like grep, this one. So grep is a regular expression engine, because what I know is when you use force org list, it outputs the username, which is an email address, and the alias. So I can easily check if that alias I passed in has a valid email address. And this is actually what it does. I'm just grabbing this email address, and now I can identify if I have a username for that or not. Okay, as I said, Google is your friend. I'm not a bash scripter, so for sure, this is not mine. So it's someone else's credit, this regular expression. But as I said, when you get started, you come to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And this is actually what I want to do, that you go out, install the CLI, and just try it out and see what possibilities you have with that. So get the user credentials for that org is actually the same idea. I just go to that org list, and I can just get the instance URL, and I just can get the password and the username from everything the Salesforce CLI is actually giving me back. With the first command, I can create a new password, which is necessary at the first step. Otherwise, you don't have credentials. You only can use the Xflow to authenticate. Read it again. Okay, one important thing, we had a discussion before, is actually when we use talent, he's using the SOAP API. And the SOAP API is always username, password, and token. Oh, I have a Scratch org token. In an automated process, a token is not a good idea. Also, verification code is not a good idea, because I span up the Scratch org, so I will get the email if someone else is testing with that credentials I created. I will get the email. It breaks that stuff. So what I'm doing in this case is actually, because it's a test scenario, it's only there for that certain use case, I do a metadata deployment to get rid of that security token. Of course, forget it if you're an admin in a productive org. You have never seen this. Okay. If you're a developer and you want to just get rid to get your data pushed temporarily, you can use this approach. I just create a classical metadata profile for the admin user, which says, okay, login IP ranges, and I use the whole internet, so everyone can log into that org. And that means I don't need a token, and I will never get any verification codes. And I pipe this to a file, admin.profile. And then the next thing I need is a package XML. This is just the old way. Maybe the one or the other remembers. This is just the old way about metadata deployment. So I create that XML file, which just probably said, okay, I want to deploy something, and I have only profiles I want to deploy. And I also, pipe this here to a package XML file. And then I use that one SFDX command, force metadata API deploy, point to that directory, and then it deploys that metadata to my org. And so the org has login ranges enabled for the whole internet. Okay, for an automated flow, this is kind of essential. Otherwise, I could not push my demo data, in our case with talent, over the SOAP API. Okay, so as I said, some other inspiration what you can do, and there are also other talks and other stuff on the web, what you really can do with a CLI. For instance, SOCL, you can just execute a SOCL query to any org you have authenticated in your Salesforce flow. So I have my productive org, I have my dev org, my sandbox, my Scratch org, and you have all the aliases for that, so you can make a quick SOCL query against one of these orgs to check, for instance, how many contacts I have on that certain org, or whatever SOCL query you have, of course. You can execute anonymous Apex. As I said, we use an Apex class to get rid of some some development and that we enable a certain feature by overriding a class, actually. You can install packages, of course. When you have a managed package, you have to install. You can check org limits, and you can also use like schema object describe and stuff like this. So why is that useful? Because you can put some more tools around, and you don't have to go to the org, open the developer console, make an anonymous Apex, get something back. You can build tools around. And one way to go there is actually working with JSON results. So every CLI command can return in JSON, and JSON can be well parsed and transformed by a program called JQ. So JQ formats the JSON and gives you the ability to filter the JSON very easily. Okay, it's not so easy because I'm not a CLI guy, so it takes some time to get into the documentation. But when you did it once, you get the idea how JQ is working, and you will love it. Because it's very easy to just make a report. For instance, give me all custom fields from that org which don't have a description on it. When you're a consultancy partner and you want to make a documentation, give me all custom fields we created in that project. And you just write this command once, and you don't have to go to the org and click through all the custom objects. There are a lot of opportunities to use this. So you have to install JQ, as I said, but it's also very easy and very good documented. And for instance, this snippet here says, get all custom fields on contact which are prefixed with FTD. Just a use case. Maybe you have some other use case in your mind where you can utilize this. I go to that org and get the JSON back and pass the JSON. Okay, another thing is when you need more powerful stuff to do, you can create a Salesforce CLI plugin. There have been also a talk today about how to do this. So you can use the Salesforce CLI command to create Salesforce CLI commands. Okay, so everything you have already when you have installed that stuff. So it's a built-in functionality to extend the CLI. It's based on Oak-Cliff, so that's the technology behind. You don't have to know about, because what you only need is that one command, plugins create, and then you will get through a wizard. And actually what you get is actually a JavaScript project, a TypeScript project actually. And so you can build some more, some richer capabilities with TypeScript, and you're getting rid of all this bash troubles and about this, to be honest, very ugly syntax of bash. You have TypeScript, so it's just another evolvement about in the whole cycle. Okay, so this is how it looks like. You just say SFDX plugins create, and then you will be guided through a wizard to scaffold everything you need for your own plugin. Yeah? When you do that, you will see exactly this here in your command line. And then you open in a text editor, and then you can adjust or can extend the basic classes with your own functionality. And then you can build something more. You can build Node.js applications, which have, for instance, a visual GUI for Salesforce DX to enable those guys really are shocked by a CLI. And this is, for instance, Lance Shee has done. So actually created a project called EasyDX, and you see it's a visual GUI for CLI commands. And so you can do the same thing in your company. If you're a consulting partner and you want to enable your consultants to generate a report about all the custom fields they have created in a certain project, you can build it as a developer. And it's not that hard. As I said, there are some steps to involve. But when you have this tool, they can just use it. And that's the power of a CLI. You have an underlying program, a very rich capabilities, what you can do with a CLI. So what I want to really have to do is start with SFDX today, download the CLI, and just try it out. Don't get afraid about. Think about repeating tasks in your daily development. You can easily create bash scripts because it's natively supported, for instance, on Mac on terminal. So you don't have to, burden is very low, the barrier is very low to do this. You can use my snippets, and there are also snippets, other snippets on the web, like Peter has a repository for solving everyday's problem with a CLI. This is very great. I also want to contribute with my snippets there, because there are so many good things in it that you can utilize even if you're not a developer. And so, as I said, if you come to that point that you need more power, some more complex stuff, you can create an own plugin. And here I have some resources which are pointing all more or less in the same direction. So we had the talk today forenoon. Your admin toolbar is not complete without Salesforce DX. Learn to leverage and love the admin experience. So if that recording comes out, again, check this out because it's also pushing in that same direction. Apply the Salesforce CLI to everyday problems. There's the Dreamforce session from Peter and also his GitHub repository and some other good resources to get into that enablement, I would say. Here's the link for the bash completion, for the plugin, and for EasyDX. And with that, I think I'm for sure over time. Sorry for that, and sorry for the push, but I hope that you really see the power of that new Salesforce DX, which is just not only a tool, it's not a CLI, it's a new mindset, and it gives you new capabilities. Thank you very much. So I'm glad to answer some questions. I'm not sure if I get kicked out of the room right now or if you can stay, but yeah, if you have any questions, please. And I'll probably jump back to the beginning. If you didn't grab the bit.ly link, oh man, a lot of things. Here's the bit.ly link again. I shared this presentation immediately so you can review all the snippets and the animations that you can, when you have a fresh mind tomorrow, to really get started. So any questions? That's what I said. You can, even if you're an admin, you can use this because you don't. The only thing you have to really do is download the CLI, and then start step by step, and then you get used to it. Like, how can I use a command? How can I get the help? How can I? What I'm doing every day. As I said, start with authenticate an org because everyone has to get into an org, and it's really, really cool because my day starts with open the terminal, open org, that one, open org, that one, open org, that one. And I'm logged into that org, to that org, to that org. And it's the very first step. And then go to the documentation, get about all the talks about how to use DX for admins, and you will get some ideas what you can do with that. And then you're eager to do it, for sure. All right, thank you very much that you joined my session that late, and have a good evening.